Hello, everyone. My guest today is Matt LeBris, entrepreneur, author, coach, philanthropist, and host of Decoding Success, a top 1% globally ranked podcast that has featured the likes of Mel Robbins, Gabby Bernstein, Dr. Vitale, and John Assaraf, just to name a few. I could not be more excited. Not only is he incredibly successful, he's young, he's vibrant, and incredibly kind and genuine. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Matt.
Michelle, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I appreciate the kind adjectives. Young is not one that I describe myself with often,
Oh,
but I
man.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. No, seriously, I am very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for the invite, and I'm excited to rock with you.
All right, let's delve right in. What does it mean to you to live your extraordinary life?
I'm going to breathe into that for a second. What it means to me to live my extraordinary life, I'm tied between two things, but I think they mean the same. One is ensuring that I'm doing the work that's necessary for me to achieve my greatest self. And that work for me in this current season of my life is a continuous turn inward, which had probably started in about 2020. The reason I'm sharing this, and I do have the chills as I say this, I literally have goosebumps on my arms right now. I personally got to this juncture due to pain. It was a pain that I constantly numbed for years upon years. And then I thought I was doing the work by walking on fire with Tony Robbins. But truth be told, you can only meet yourself as deep as you know yourself. And for me now, that is what makes my life extraordinary. I see it in every bucket of life, whether it be relationships, in my career, my business, and just friendships, my health, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like that is me living my absolute best life without a doubt. And yeah, I guess that does tie into the second part. I was definitely going to say something along the lines of putting forth the effort to be my greatest self, but being my greatest self is that turn inward right now, 100% wholeheartedly.
I love that. I talk a lot myself about this idea of look, a younger me was totally into the hustle and grind culture. It's how I built my
Sure.
early success. And I know that's part of your story as well. But then there came a time that void or that hole was never being filled enough or fast enough through all the hustle and grind. And it was getting
Hmm.
exhausting. And it really took this recognition of the only place there was solace and connection was going inward. So let's talk about you. You're a kid from Queens,
I
right?
am born and raised.
And I know that you had a pretty turbulent upbringing, and that's driven a lot of your introspection.
Sure.
One of the lines that you have in your podcast and on your website that really hit me was, I have a master's degree in failure and a PhD in getting back up. And that just really resonates deeply for me. So, talk to us a little bit about growing up in Queens.
Queens is a beautiful place. When I talk about Queens or New York, I have an absolute love for it without a doubt, but I don't want to come off as an arrogant New Yorker. So what I always say is there's beauty in wherever you are from. So there's people tuned into this that are not from Queens. You could be from anywhere in the world. You have beauty that New York doesn't have, and that's totally okay. But Queens shaped me. It really, really did. In fact, they say this was a quote from someone that I had on my show. He was like, listen, kings come from queens. And you could take that in numerous different regards, right? Like you could view your mother as a queen, or on the flip side, you could view the actual geographical location of Queens as kings come from here. But like I said, it shaped me. The hustle and bustle. I'll tell you a very quick story of where that even started. I'll never forget. I don't even know what grade I was in, but we grew up on the block. This is where you played manhunt and red light, green light and tag and all of that good stuff, sports in the street. And I had a best friend growing up. His name was Anthony. We would always get together every Saturday morning. We went to two different schools. He was a year younger than me, but that was my best friend growing up. Every Saturday morning, we would go to the park, we would play catch, we would do something. We were very, very blessed, still are blessed, to the point where our parents would gift us money to go grab lunch at Wendy's or whatever we wanted, pizza, or go buy a pack of cards. But there was a day where that stopped. And this particular weekend, we both ran into an instance where this stopped. And our bright idea, being that both of our mothers pulled into our respective driveways almost symbiotically at the same time, was to go sell the groceries that they just bought. It sounds messed up to do, but This is not something I suggest, but I feel like this is kind of where the hustle started. Like I realized like I needed to go out there and get it. And it was possible. So like we took chips and salsa, put them in plates, did whatever we did. We literally walked around the corner. We were selling them on the corner. I'll never forget that. And I think we made like $10 each. Like it was absolutely nothing. But like that's how Queens had shaped me. And listen, you might rebuttal and be like, well, did Queens shape you to steal from your parents? And no, that's not what I'm getting at. But what it did teach me was to like
It's
go out there and get it.
your early
Yes.
entrepreneurial life.
Exactly, exactly. But beyond that, on the more turbulent spectrum, and these were just cards I was dealt, and all of us are dealt cards, we just have to learn how to play them. So that for me included feeling the neglect and rejection and not having my childhood needs met, which is fine. That's now my responsibility to self-parent. But what that did was lead me to act out in ways for the attention that I was seeking. So I did that through being a class clown. It led me not even to getting accepted into any high schools here in New York City, and that's a whole system that we can get into if you want, but eventually got in due to my athletic abilities until I got kicked out of 2 high schools. Got arrested in my senior year of high school for something I just didn't know how to control my emotions. Lost my dream of playing any professional sport due to an injury during my senior year. Failed out of college, watched my mother battle cancer. Obviously, the shores have shifted in numerous different regards, but things were definitely turbulent. And that's why I say that there's a master's degree in getting knocked down, but a PhD in getting back up, because that's really the only choice.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about how your experience not getting into the high schools that
Mm.
your family had wanted you to. Because I do recall a story, and I'm trying to remember if it was that you had gone to a high school that was it was a
Yeah,
seminary, right?
it was a
And that
seminary school.
I found that very shocking. Were you once destined to go on that path?
To priesthood, no, I was not, and I lied to get into that school. So you actually had in your, I guess it would be like an entrance interview. I did have to say that I was interested in becoming a priest, but they already knew the deal. But that is the goal of the school. The goal of the school is to send young men off to become priests. And I don't know, there might have been like 1 or 2 people in my class that did become priests, but I didn't last long in that school because ultimately the idea behind it was that I would be able to play sports. I would be in an environment that girls weren't in, and my parents were under the impression that I was acting out to get the girls in my class attention, which wasn't the case. I wanted their attention. Not
Right.
even so much my dad, because I had his attention. It was more so my mom. And when my sister was born, and listen, I'm just being honest here. There's no shame or blame or any of that sort. Like I'm just having an open, honest conversation. Like when my sister was born, I felt my mom's attention went solely on her. And as my parents were going through divorce, I really felt, and I can look back and say this now, that my mom viewed me as my father. And she took out whatever animosity she had toward him on me. Again, these are the cards I'm dealt, just have to play them. So they thought the bright idea would be for me to go to an all boys school, which was not a bright idea in the long run because it was essentially a fraternity 4 years early. People go into fraternities and sororities in college. I did it in my freshman year of high school, and we were such a reckless group. But the thing was, at a certain point, that reckless group, the individuals in said reckless group, started to shift and made sure that they took care of themselves. Meanwhile, on the flip side, I'm like, hey, like, why are we stopping this, this behavior? Like, let's keep it going. And I was spearheading all of it until I realized that I was now the one that was like creating this detrimental behavior for myself, and I was doing it alone. But it led me to getting kicked out. So I had left and went on to another school, which definitely served me better in numerous different regards. But, that behavior definitely still stuck around for a little bit.
So walk us through. So this is going on in your late teens
Early teens. So
and
this was early
early
teens for
teens.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
early teens. And by your late teens, early 20s, you're like full hustle culture. You're like starting to make some money. You're figuring your
Sure.
life out. Did you end up going to college? Did you not go to college? Tell us a little bit about what happened after that high school time for you.
Yeah, so there was a really big pivotal moment in high school. So I would have been 17 at the time. This was October of 2009. I literally lost my dream of playing baseball on the next level and basketball on the next level, which I ended up doing, but I had tore the labrum in my shoulder, college scholarships out the window, and I gave up on it, to be honest. So I want to take some accountability for that because I did go to have surgery, did all my proper rehab, and then when the time was to come to pursue it again, I just gave up. I literally gave up, and I'll never forget that because not only did I give up on myself, I gave up on my team. And this was brought to my attention yesterday in a conversation just like this. So I want to make sure that I'm taking accountability for this. So as I gave up on it, the reason I did was because I started to fall in love with a social business that I was in. I started to get into the realm of hospitality. I started
Mhm.
to work for an individual that had a hospitality company, and I was making cash under the table. The IRS can't come after me because this was many years ago. But, it was very fruitful, especially for a high schooler. And not only was it fruitful from a monetary perspective, it allowed me to get into parties underage, which was where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in these environments with people that had fake IDs, women a little bit older than me that were more attractive to me, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where things really started to shift. So as I did go into college, funny enough, I just mentioned I got kicked out of high school twice. I had no clue what I wanted to study, but I decided upon education. The kid that got kicked out of high school twice wanted to study education. What a bright idea. It didn't last long because I went to private school my entire life, and mommy and daddy would have got a call home if I ever skipped. So, to that point, I didn't understand the rules of college to where, hey, if you miss 3 classes or if you're late X amount of times, it counts as an absence. And I kind of tried to bend those rules and it didn't work. So I failed a bunch of classes. I was definitely addicted to marijuana. People don't think that's possible. I think it's very much possible. And I chose money over it all. I said to myself, you know what? I was under the impression money was going to heal all of the pain that we just talked about.
Yep.
All of it. Like every single thing. I failed out of college at that point. I was working like 5 jobs. One was a business that was owned by me and 5 friends or 6 friends in the hospitality realm. The other 4, I was just like, "You know what? I have all this time. I'm not going to school. I failed out. What am I gonna do?" So I was like, "I'm a business guy. I'm gonna work at a gym so I don't have to pay for a membership. I'm gonna sell weed because I wanna smoke it and I don't wanna pay for it. I'm gonna deliver for a restaurant in my neighborhood because I get to eat for free." Like, that was the way I was thinking, and I just hustled, hustled, hustled until a point where I realized, like, this isn't solving the problem.
So what changed? You're making money hand over fist and you're
Mm.
young, so it's very alluring. What changes for you?
It was a moment in my friend's restaurant, and it was a moment I'll never forget. The restaurant had closed, closed up for the night. Him and I are just sitting. I was like, dude, I saw this YouTube video. This is years ago. And we're sitting in this restaurant, just lounging around, drinking like a glass of wine, maybe smoking a little, whatever we were doing doesn't even matter. And I said, dude, I want you to watch this. And 3 words within this video forever changed my life. Like, you ever have those types of moments where it's just like, boom, it clicks, like right there on the spot? That was this moment. 3 words that forever changed my life were legacy over currency. And I
Mm.
said to myself, Matt, are you living like that? And the honest answer was no. I was living the complete opposite way. I was living currency over legacy. And the reason I say that was because if I didn't change my ways, a lot of people would remember me as being an asshole. A lot of people would remember me as being an asshole. I put myself first in I'm so blessed. Some of my business partners at that time are still my best friends today. Like, they dealt with a very young-minded Matt, and they are still my best friends. I'm so blessed for that because I was just Matt first always. Matt first always. Money second always. Then everyone else. And in that moment, I said, you know what? I have to do something about this. Got myself back in college, graduated with my 2-year degree, went to a 4-year school, got my 4-year degree. And I said to myself, as I was in that 4-year school, I literally remember crying. I'll never forget this. I'm an emotional guy. I didn't necessarily own it back then. I sure as hell do now. But I'll never forget being in the business school's office. And I said, I got to do something. I need to step up and be a student leader. I remember crying in front of the dean. I was like, these students here, they have not had the opportunities I've had in life, and I want to bring it to them. Like, I really, really wanted to bring it to them. And of course, I'm a couple years older. I was on the 7-year plan to get a 4-year degree. I'm not a doctor. I should be with all the time I put in, but I'm not a doctor.
They
So
should
I,
give you
I'll
an
never,
honorary doctorate at this point.
an honorary that's, yeah, I'm down for that. Uh, so in that moment, I became a student leader. I started to revolutionize this school's business program. I started to bring events that the president of the school was showing up to. And then things started to pay off for me because in my quote unquote junior year, I received a call as I'm on a beautiful beach in Dominican Republic celebrating my spring break, drink in hand, and I looked at my phone and I'm saying to myself, if I answer this, I'm going to get charged by Verizon because international wasn't
Right.
really a thing
Roaming
yet.
roaming charges up the wazoo.
Exactly. And across the screen, it said CUNY York College, which is City University of New York, York College, which is where I had attended school. And I'm saying to myself, why the hell are they calling me? I know I paid my tuition because I did myself. My parents cut me off. I failed out. That was it. So I answer the phone, and the woman on the other end of the line is like, hey, do you want to meet Damon John from Shark Tank? And I said, wow. What I wanted to say was, you know me so damn well. Why do you even have to ask? But I didn't say that because I'm much more polite than that. So I said yes, and things changed from there. I had this opportunity to meet a guy that I truly look up to. I had a 5-minute conversation with him. I was one of 3 students to meet him, shook his hand. He looked at me. He asked me if I was taught to break people's hands here. I said no. It was very good vibes off the bat. From there, at the end of the conversation, which was merely 5 minutes, if that, because we were taking pictures in between, I looked at him and I said, Damon, I'm going to work for you. And I know I have one big head, but he looked at me like I have 10 of these, and I know I don't have 10. So, long story short, this is where life comes full circle. At the end of the event, I was sitting in the front. I brought my mentor. He was sitting in the back because he wasn't a student. We meet in the middle of the theater, and we thought we were the last 2 to leave. And out of my left peripheral vision, I see a gentleman that resembles Santa Claus to a T. His name is George, a very incredible individual. And I said to my mentor, I'm like, who is that guy? He looks really familiar. And he goes, yeah, that's George Barnes. We work with him in the hospitality industry. The only reason I didn't know George was because he's much older than I am, or was at the time. And we were on a few events together. So we go outside, we talk to George. Lo and behold, George works for Damon. And I said to him, maybe like a month after, he got me back in the green room. I had another conversation with Damon. And I literally said to George, tell me what I need to do for an internship. I got an interview, got an internship, turned that internship into a job, and a job into being interviewed by Damon. So life definitely changed just from being serviceable. And I know that was a long-winded way of saying all of that, but shifting my view of money first to service first, it goes back to that quote, the more you give is the more you get. And that's exactly what had happened.
How has that shaped the way you look at the world today? First of all, tremendous experience, but also one that probably required you to shift immediate gratification, right? Because I'm going to guess it probably wasn't as lucrative even as all of your side hustles and everything
Oh,
going
for
in
sure.
the
Here's the crazy thing, right? You ready for this?
yeah.
I took it overboard. And that's one thing that I don't speak about enough. So I put myself last so many times and I put service first so many times that I found myself actually struggling at points financially. And I don't speak about this enough, so I really appreciate this question. I struggled at times because I thought service was the key. And it is, but there's a balance, and everyone's balance is different, right? So for me, I love being of service. I built a library here in my local community. I raised $15,000 for frontline workers during the early days of the pandemic and to support small business, specifically restaurants here in Queens, Brooklyn, New York City, etc. I love service, but finding that balance is important. And now I'm still teetering on that topic. Like it's still something that I'm figuring out because as we change, as we grow, as our seasons change, those types of things change. Our balance changes. I took that overboard. Now it's something, yes, it's very important, but understand that there's a balance to it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Talk a little bit about how all of these experiences cumulatively led to this nomination, the Forbes 30 under 30, which I think is tremendous honor. So congratulations on having that happen for
I
you. It's
appreciate it.
big. How did that end up coming about?
I think it came about in numerous different ways. Again, just very blessed to have the opportunity to have worked with Damon, and that brought a lot of spotlight onto just the work I was doing in general because it's an opportunity that not many people get. Maybe you can get an internship, not many people get the job. There's less seats there, and I was blessed to be one of them where a position was created for me to step into. I think that was definitely part of it, and then furthermore, in that particular season of my life, I started to dabble because I was influenced, right? I mean, sometimes we don't know what's possible for ourselves until we experience it from a proximity perspective. Like, we can read all of the books or watch all the YouTube videos or listen to all of these conversations, but until we're there firsthand and seeing it with our own eyes, and Damon was a perfect example because he's a boy from Queens, New York as well. That's why he came to my college. My college was in Queens. He was a town over, like literally where he grew up. It was a perfect example to be in proximity with. And they always say you're the five closest people to you is you're going to be the sixth or whatever they say, right? I think being in proximity of that showed me what was possible to the extent where I started to mimic it in a way where in the beginning I was trying to find my footing and maybe it wasn't the most authentic version of me and maybe I was a little robotic, which is fine, right? I don't crucify myself for that. But I started to do a lot of public speaking. And just from writing about experiences, writing about how I turned that internship into a job on LinkedIn or writing about how I did whatever, people started to really resonate with it. And at one point, an individual hit me up and he was like, "Hey, can you come speak to my class?" And I'm like, I sent it to my friends. I'm like, this guy wants me to speak to his class? I was so confused, but I started to do that. And I just think being of service in that way really led to nominations and recognitions of that sort and while pursuing dreams. So ultimately, again, it comes back down to that service.
I totally agree. I'm curious, how has your spiritual life come about during all of this? I'm curious, do you subscribe to this idea that we are spiritual beings having a human experience? And how does that connect for you if that's the case? And what
Yeah.
kind of spiritual practices do you have, if any?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm born Roman Catholic, right? And I was in Catholic school my entire life, all the way up until college. In fact, when I was 17 years old, or maybe potentially 16, honestly, I think I was 16, I was playing basketball on a nationally ranked program. And I'll never forget it. All the kids on my team had tattoos. And I'm like, you know what? I want tattoos. And of course, it was illegal for me to get a tattoo before I turned 18, but I found a way to do it. And across my chest, I have "In God I Trust," which is why I bring this up. And that is one of the most meaningful tattoos to me today because although there's days I don't trust, how damn powerful is it to trust, right? It's like that ultimate surrender is one of the most powerful things. My views have definitely shifted, right? I mean, growing up Roman Catholic, I don't go to church every Sunday. I swear like a sailor. I sin. I'm a human being. But I really think there is a greater power, like without a doubt. Maybe it's not what I was brought up thinking, but there is a power out there and we get signs every single day. And I'll give you an example. Just last night, I was worrying. I was actually going out on a date. I was worrying. I'm like, damn, like I'm meeting this girl here. She has bags with her. I want to make sure I park close to the restaurant, this, that, the other. Before I even left my driveway, I needed a car wash. This is how crazy life is. And I think this is God acting in our favor. And this is my sense of spirituality. I'm giving you examples to paint this. I'm leaving my driveway and I really needed a car wash. So, in the process of doing so, my neighbor's outside. And I'm like, "Hey man, what is he outside with?" His hose. Next thing you know, start spraying down my car. He's like, "Dude, you could just go right to the restaurant now. You don't even need to worry about a car wash." I was like, "I really appreciate that." God worked in my favor. I just mentioned the woman I'm dating, she was traveling yesterday. We were meeting at the restaurant. She had bags, wanted to make sure I could put them in the car. I was worrying. I'm like, am I going to get a spot close? It's a really hard place to park anywhere remotely close to. What happens? Spot right outside the restaurant. Literally right. Like, if you're telling me that is not God, are you telling me that's luck? Because I can give you a million more examples. So, like,
You're
that
in the
is
right frequency, friend.
it's just to me, that's spirituality. Like, that's my spirituality. Like, when I'm driving, the other day I'm driving, I saw a 444 on a license plate. Last night I was driving my date home, we saw a 7777. Like, what, like, that to me is spirituality.
All right, that begs the question, how was the date?
It was fantastic. This is a testament to my growth, and I think this is a way for everyone to evaluate their growth. Who I was attracted to before I started to turn inward in 2020 was a very different person. And in fact, if I had started to date the person that I'm currently with in 2020, I would have been turned off by her because you want to know why? She treats me right. I would have been turned off by that. Because going back to what I had said earlier in regards to childhood needs not being met, I viewed love as neglect and rejection. And people don't think you can be neglected and rejected in a relationship. You sure as hell can be. And that's what I experienced in 2020. So when I compare the two and I look at the two, 2020's relationship to 2023's relationship, they are night and day. And I have never experienced someone treat me so well. That alone brings about an attraction, and I have the best time with her. I really, really do. We could just sit on the couch all night and I could have the best time, or we could go have a night out on the town. I mean, we were everywhere. We were at a fantastic restaurant with 20-foot ceilings, beautiful, beautiful ambiance. Moved over to a rooftop. We were actually in the water tower of the rooftop, had such a beautiful view. Just soak all of that in with someone you really care about. It was absolutely fantastic.
I love it. Well, congratulations. That's always good. Well, tell me about that breakthrough because I do think a lot of us go through that at some point in time as a development process, particularly if you didn't get everything you needed growing up, of when you recognize the toxicity of some of the relationships you're in based
Mm.
on old patterns, usually from when we were kids. When did you start to realize that your own worth and your own love needs were gonna have to be met by you, Matt,
I
first
could
before you could
Yeah.
go out to anyone else? Because it happens for different people, and sometimes it never happens, right?
I could tell you the exact day. It was June of 2020, and if you really want the exact day, I swear I could tell you. But I don't know what it was. I was in this relationship, and there's no shame on her. Incredible woman, seriously, really incredible woman. But I kept finding myself feeling anxious. And at the time, I didn't know. I thought I was the problem. And it's not to say she was the problem, but I thought I was the problem. And I'm like, dude, you got to fix this. What's going on? I don't know what provoked me to say to myself, I'm going to go to therapy. And I did therapy years ago when I was in elementary school because my parents divorced. Their lawyers were like, hey, you got to do that for him, et cetera, et cetera. I would go in there as a kid and count the books on the bookshelf. I did not do therapy back then.
Just get
Um,
me through this hour.
oh my God, it was torturous. But June of 2020, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know I was being mistreated. I didn't know that and listen, I also didn't know how to communicate my needs. There was a lot of stuff that I needed to be able to do. I didn't know I had a voice because I was such a people pleaser. I was scared of conflict. All of these things, right? So going through that process in 2020 was honestly marvelous. And there were breakthroughs over the course of time. I'm a stubborn New Yorker and I'm a millennial. That's not a good combo. If you told me something right now, I would have, if you were like, hey, Matt, if you do this, you can fly. Well, something of that sort. Like, I'm going to have to see it for myself. Like, I'm going to have to try it. I'm going to have to live it. I'm going to have to experience it. Like, I just can't take your word for it without whatever. So, my therapist was really opening my eyes to it, to a lot of things. And it's not to say that I didn't believe her or I didn't trust her, but I needed it to be proved to me. And when you're in a relationship, it's really hard. And you don't want to give up on someone. There's emotions involved and et cetera, et cetera. But June of 2020 was where that shift happened, or at least started to happen. And over the course of that year, it started to transcend and unfold right in front of my eyes until you build up that courage to make really courageous decisions, really hard decisions. And those decisions shape a life.
That's amazing because I think if you don't have good role models during your formative years, it's difficult. You end up
Mm.
staying in things that are for too long, that really weren't meant for you because they're familiar or they feel safe on some level because you understand them, even if it's not meeting your needs. So, congratulations for getting through that.
Relationships are such a tricky thing. And they're such a mirror, right? They're literally such a mirror. So when I look back on that relationship in 2020, I say to myself, okay, you were being served up neglect, rejection. You felt like the last man on the totem pole, needs weren't being met. Okay, Matt, like that's being reflected back at you. So there's a good chance that means you're not meeting your own needs. You might not know your own needs, or you might be neglecting yourself. All of that. Like I had to reflect on that. And that's why I took some time to, like, date myself, and there were definitely times I tried to date in between, but I really needed time to date myself,
Mhm.
and I think everyone does. I think everyone needs to try to date themselves just a little bit, and I'm not saying take yourself to the movies or a dinner, and if you can do that, that's great, but spend time with yourself.
Let's
I
talk
love that.
decoding success.
Let's
Um,
talk it.
Congratulations, first of all. I think you're already at what, episode 300? Amazing.
We're getting close. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Top 1% globally. Huge, huge, huge. And some amazing guests. And you just
I
keep getting
appreciate it.
better. The hosting responsibilities are big. You want to draw the best out of your guests. You want to get them to really open up and talk and have aha moments for your listeners and share wisdom. But what I love is this back and forth vulnerability that you are willing to give to the guests and to your audience. And it really is endearing. First of all, there's a genuineness. I now begin to think like all guys from Queens must be like this because this guy is just so sincere and so genuine and authentic. And in my eyes, incredibly young to have come to these places because it takes a lot of people a lot longer to get there. So thank you for the show. It's great. I really have enjoyed listening to it. Tell me about your decision to even go into podcasting because you were doing it now. You've been doing it for a while.
5 years. Yeah. First and foremost, thank you for all those kind words. That really means a lot. For 5 years. So I'm going to be honest with you. 2018, I had a really hard decision to make. And if I did have a time machine, I would go back and change this decision, which is crazy to say because obviously that means I regret it. I was on the fence about leaving my job with Damon John. And I mean, I was so young. I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, whatever it was at the time. And I really wanted a promotion. And I was just so scared of conflict that I was like scared to approach on that topic again because I had already brought it up and I felt entitled and all of these things. But long story short, 2018, I decided to leave my job. And in the process of doing so, I had a former intern, coworker, and now one of my best friends continuously urging me to start a podcast. He was like, Matt, you're speaking all over the country. Like, why don't you start a podcast? And his name is also Matt. I said, Matt, when the hell do I have time to start a freaking podcast? Do you not see me in the office with you 6 days a week? Literally 6 days a week. Like, when am I going to do this, dude? So the time came when I had left my job with zero plan. I never suggest anyone do that because I paid the price for that. And I was like, all right, well, I have nothing else going on. I need to start a podcast. So I did. And it has been the best decision I've ever made in my life. Literally. It has been, it's like, you know this because you're a podcast host and you're fantastic at what you do. Like you're birthing a digital baby into the world that makes an impact like right out of the gate. It's not easy, right? It's definitely not easy. There's actually a statistic out there, and you beat the statistic, which is incredible, that I believe it says 97% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes.
Yeah.
How crazy is that, right? So, I mean, like I said, it's literally been the best decision I've ever made for numerous reasons. Like, yes, I'm telling you my intention for starting the show was merely because I had nothing else on my plate. But what that had birthed into is the fact that, and this sounds selfish, but let me give you the unselfish part first. It makes an impact far beyond what I would be able to do without this podcast. Not only do we get to make an impact, I'm also able to be a student. That's a core value of mine, like forever being a student. And I'm able to ask questions unapologetically. I'm able to ask questions with zero shame, with zero embarrassment. Like whatever's on my mind, I can ask. I'm just able to tap into a student mentality in so many ways. And any podcaster is, you as well, like with your incredible conversations. Like it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And in return, you get to make an impact.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a great way to also go on the journey out loud, right?
Yeah.
It's constant learning and to be able to have it in conversation with other human beings that are really getting to the meat of life and living on the precipice of their best lives, not because everything's perfect, but because they're unapologetic about wanting to live well and wanting to learn and wanting to grow and wanting to live large and wanting to feel all the feels. That to me is what it's all about.
Yeah. Like we have to make the most of it. And that's part of, I very much so align with like how you define that, like living your best life. You got to max out. You got to max out in every area that you can. And maxing out on some days, not easy all the time. Sometimes you only have 80%, sometimes you only got 30, but It's so damn necessary.
So that brings me to my next question because I know that you have had these moments of highs, right? What happens when the lows hit? Because they hit all of
Oh,
us. The dips come. So what do you do when you hit the lows? How do you navigate that?
the answer is I allow myself to feel it, right? You just said something to me that really resonates, and a buddy of mine, you've given me the chills so many times on this episode. A buddy of mine said this to me, or said it in conversation, actually on my podcast a few episodes ago. And he just had a baby boy. He's
Mm.
taking some major steps in life, a lot of change. He goes, Matt, through all of this, I've started to learn that the meaning of life is to feel life, to feel it. And he goes, listen, there's going to be one day where feeling life is not possible. So, like, no matter what's coming up for you right now, you have to ensure that you feel it. And that hit me so hard. It hits me harder and harder every time I say, like, right now, I have tears in my eyes. And when I hit low moments, I'm telling you, I had one of the lowest years of my life last year. 2022 was one of the hardest years of my life. I found myself in mental spirals I never in my life had imagined I would experience. It was dark at times. I had an injury that only supported all of these mental constructs that I was building in my mind. And it was a dark place. And it really took courage. It took action. It took time to start to move the needle in a more favorable direction where I was able to get myself out of it. Now I come to you as a totally different person. Am I 100% out of the storm I was in? Maybe not, but I'm allowing myself to feel that storm. In the past, years upon years ago, I tried to numb. How did I numb? By making money, by smoking weed, by drinking, by playing video games, whatever it may be. I would find a way to exit said feelings. Now, are they comfortable? Hell no. Absolutely not. Also, let me just add, I am so blessed with the support system around me of friends that can hold space, but that is the key. I allow myself to feel. That's number one on the list. And then you have to have the mindset of understanding that the storm will pass. It might not pass when we want it to. We probably don't even want to be in it in the first place, but it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But just knowing that a storm can't last, the sun has to come back out. But allow yourself to feel.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that's one of the hardest things as a human is to be bombarded with the feelings of doubt or depression or just not feeling right in your own skin and tell yourself, I've got to reframe this. Somehow this is working for me. It's not happening to me, it's happening for me. How do I just sit with it? I love it. So, for our listeners, Matt just held up a sign that he has right in his office that says, Life is happening for you, and to you is crossed out. I love it. Let's talk about success. What are the key principles for you around success?
I'm going to give you an unconventional answer, and this might not be what you were expecting, but this is what's true on my heart right now. Once again, chills. Years ago, I would have defined success by essentially a dollar sign, right? And I think we've made that evident in this conversation. And I think many people do experience that. So if someone listening to this is in that place and they feel some type of way about shifting themselves, I get it. I was there 100%. Today, what success looks like is undefined in my life. And this is why I think this is an unconventional reply, but I think it's important because I know a lot of people go through this. I don't think enough talk about it though. When it comes to goals, when it comes to how we define something, how do we define love? What does life mean? All of these things. We might have had an answer in the past, and that's A. How we define it today would be Z. But what happens to the other 24 letters? That in between. I think that in between is not embraced enough. And that's where I currently am in my life. I am in the season of embracing the in between moments, not knowing what success looks like to me. If you ask me what my goals are or what do I want to achieve, I can give you replies to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what success is. Definitely from what I've known in this in between season and embracing it fully, that to me, success is 100% being courageous. Being courageous is like, that has become one of the number one things for me because in so many ways I've had to be courageous over the past year. Whether it be it's courageous for you to put your ego in the back seat and take it out of the driver's seat. It's courageous for you to step into fear in whether that be in mental constructs or physical, whatever it is. There's so many ways that courage shows up. So I'm starting to realize like I can start to piece together what success looks like in little ways in this season just by what's happening for me right now. But that's why I'm saying it's a little unconventional because I'm in that in between and I'm not in a rush to get to Z to be able to say, hey, success is this, and this. It's like, you know what? I'm here right now. I'm present right now. I'm embracing this moment right now and seeing what transpires from it.
I think that's an honest and authentic answer, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and being open about where you are, and I appreciate that the host of Decoding Success is in the season of, "I'm open and I'm discovering." I think that's a
Mm.
great place to be.
That's where the magic happens. It happens in the in between. The magic happens in the in between without a doubt, but the in between doesn't feel as gratifying, right? It's not as sexy as getting to the finish line or getting to the destination, but the present is the destination. The past is gone, the future ain't promised. So
All we
that's
have is the now.
that's it. That's it.
So, Matt, thank you for your time, for your generosity, for your vulnerability. It's just been a pleasure getting to know you. And I wish you all the best. And I know that if you are like this at this stage of your life, like unlimited potential and so much growth is going to happen. And inevitably, a lot of success is just going to follow because you are one of the most genuine, sincere, and authentic guys I've ever met. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You're incredible at what you do. I'm really grateful for this. Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to continue to receive content that inspires. Let us know what resonates and what you'd like to hear more about. You are here for a purpose. It's time for you to step into that purpose, become the most authentic version of you, and start living, truly living your extraordinary life. It's never too late. And in fact, we're just getting started.